Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Okay, so genetically modified organisms, they're more commonly known as GMOs. So pretty much they involve the process of genetic manipulation of a plant or an animal. They've been using this process since about the mid-90s, so about 1994. The reason for this is to increase the amount of food that we're able to make over a year, and to pretty much just make things more uniform so they're easier to sell, so to grow things in a more uniform order. And since 1994, there's always been sort of the question as to whether or not GMOs are good or bad for our health. And so my argument is that GMOs have an overall negative effect on us. So my first claim would be that GMOs have negative effects on our bodies. My second claim would be that GMOs have negative effects on the environment. And my final claim is that there are unknown dangers with GMOs, which makes them unsafe to use. So back to my first point, GMOs have negative effects on our bodies. According to Organic Authority, it's a website, GMOs require massive amounts of pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. So pretty much they contain all these chemicals, which I believe is pretty self-explanatory. It's not really safe to have in our bodies. And so these chemicals weaken our immune systems. According to Calorie Bee, which is a credible health site, the gene inserted into items such as GMO soy transfers into the DNA of bacteria living in human intestines. So now the gene functions as bacteria. So pretty much what this means is that there's more of a chance of you getting sick with intestinal issues, because the food sort of just sits there and turns into bacteria because your body's not able to process it very well. So my second point, GMOs have negative effects on the environment. So GMOs are dangerous for animals, and according to One Green Planet, GMOs are a threat to bees and their ecosystem. They are actively killing them. So as we all know, bees are a pretty important factor in our ecosystem, and without them, we would be in a pretty bad position. So if we keep planting these seeds, then we're basically going to start killing off bees, and that's not good. So GMOs actually have been also tested on rats, and according to Mother Earth News, the researchers say that severe adverse health effects, including mammary tumors and kidney and liver damage, leading to premature death. So pretty much no humans have actually died, but there are rats being tested with GMOs, and it's unsafe for them, so it would conclude that it's unsafe for us as well. And then farmers are subject to contamination just by the neighboring farmers using GMOs. So even if you're an organic farmer and you don't use any GMOs or pesticides, if your neighboring farmer uses GMOs, then your soil becomes contaminated, and eventually you're going to have GMO plants as well. And my third point, there are unknown dangers with GMOs making them unsafe to use. So if there's no research against or for GMOs, it's pretty unethical for them to be distributed, because we don't know what they're going to do to our health, because they haven't been around for long enough for us to actually see the long-term effects. According to Healthline, a medical approved site, there is no good evidence that proves that there are negative or positive effects on the body. So, like I said, if there's no evidence, then we can't assume the best, because it's possible that they're just overall going to hurt us. So overall, GMOs are unhealthy for our lives.
All right, Vionni, the propositions clearly identified at the beginning of the speech. The contents are clearly set up for the presentation, so structural stuff is pretty good shape. Also, when you get to the body of the speech, you signpost those points as you get to them, so it's easy to follow the structure. You're doing the right thing there. The proof on the individual points, I think, is a little bit thin. The sites that you present, I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with them, but I'm not exactly sure that they have a huge amount of credibility. You talk, Healthline, and you say it's a medically validated source, and I'm going, well, yeah, but I don't know who they are. What's the basis of their conclusion? And it's a lot of conclusionary pieces of testimony that are being presented without as much explanation as there needs to be. And I think that's a little bit problematic. The claim that that we're going to be exposed to a variety of pesticides, fungicides, herbicides as a result of the use of GMOs seems to run contrary to the function of GMOs, which were generally designed to reduce the use of a lot of those products. So I'm a little conflicted in how you've reached that conclusion. So I think you need a better explanation on that, a little bit more information. And the notion that bacteria appears in the body, well, I assume that bacteria appears in the body for almost everything that you eat. The question is that bacteria harmful or dangerous? And that's the thing, that's the part of the argument that I think is missing on that particular point. The threat to the bees, we got this one general quote, it's killing bees, and that's the proof that we have. And I don't know that that is convincing at all. It's very conclusionary. It's another one of those generic websites that, again, I'm not saying they're lying sacks of scum. I'm just saying I don't know who they are and what the basis for their conclusion is, and unless I have some reason to give them credibility and think that that's true, I'm going to need a little bit more information on the notion that it's having a harmful consequence. And the impact, of course, of wiping out bees, for instance, might very well be significant and important. I believe it probably is, but I think that's something that you could probably develop a little bit more in your argument as well. You got to be a little bit careful with the ethical argument on the third point, because that's a value claim, and that I think falls outside of the purview of what the assignment is. Additional risks that we don't know, I think you do have a right to make the argument that there are potential consequences that we are as yet uncertain of, and that is problematic. The notion that we are basically testing on human populations and that is in some way dangerous, I think that's a perfectly legitimate argument. But you don't demonstrate any of those potential dangers, and you even say at one point we don't have any information about people dying, but we know that rats, for instance, get tumors and such like that. And the jump from that to those other risks, I think, is a little bit big. And I imagine that it won't be problematic for the person responding to this to find studies that suggest that there are no harms, and in comparing those studies, it'll probably depend a lot on the sources that they cite in their presentation, and that's one of the things that you want to do a better job of, is making sure that your evidence is not just legitimate, but it's credible, because sometimes it comes down to which set of information am I going to believe, and you want to make the strongest case for your evidence as possible. Delivery is a little bit problematic. Sometimes you're doing a lot of reading. You have there was one point where I thought you were even closing your eyes while you were speaking to us. It was like, I don't have to look at you people, and you want to look at us. We're your audience. We're the ones that you want to convince, and you need to kind of connect with us a little bit more. All right, thank you.